everybody, welcome back to Prepping and Crime Daily. I'm your host, Rebecca, and I recap live trials so you have something to listen to, true crime while you're crafting. So today I'm going to cover the first day and the second day of testimony in the Rust case. This is the Rust movie set case where Alec Baldwin accidentally discharged his weapon, and for some unknown reason, there was a live round in the weapon. Wasn't supposed to be. The gun wasn't supposed to be on the set, and he certainly wasn't supposed to be firing it. The bullet, the projectile, went into the cinematographer, Helena Hutchins. It went into her chest. It exited her chest and then went into the first assistant director and into his shoulder, I believe. He survived. Helena Hutchins did not. She left behind her husband and a 1-year-old. So, Alec Baldwin has been charged with manslaughter, as has the armorer, but this is only the armorer trial. Alec Baldwin's trial hasn't even been set yet, but I expect we'll hear a lot of the same evidence in his trial as well. So let's start from the first witness, who is a first responder on the scene. He gets there and immediately, and he says, he was asked by defense counsel, isn't your first order of business to secure evidence? And he's like, no, it's to save lives. And, they immediately began working on Helena Hutchins. It took them a good long time to get her stabilized enough to get her onto a helicopter and to a hospital. Now, she was pronounced deceased either at the hospital, but I don't know if she died en route to the hospital or at the hospital. But she was very, very unstable on scene. My understanding, though, is she was awake. Like when it first happened, she was awake for a portion of this, and you could hear people talking to her when they showed some of the video. So that's what they did with this first officer. They showed his body cam footage, and this was the footage that the judge had asked Court TV not to show, because obviously it didn't show the shooting, obviously because he wasn't there yet. And I understand from a witness that testified on Friday that it didn't get filmed. There was no footage from the film crew on set of this shooting. You see him approach. Well, you don't see him. You can hear things going on as he's approaching. You hear a man moaning and groaning, and that's the guy that got shot in the shoulder. And you hear people talking to Helena, hang in there, you're going to be okay, that kind of thing, which is terribly haunting in retrospect. You hear at one point this officer asking, where's the helicopter? Well, the helicopter got there and sat there for a very long time before they actually could get her on it. They put her in the ambulance first, and then still trying to get her stable to put her into the helicopter. They had the guy with the shoulder injury. He was off the scene very quickly. So this guy was able to, one of the things he was asked to do by his supervisor was to get everybody together that had been in the church during this shooting. Now, this was on this old movie set on a ranch in New Mexico. So this case is out of New Mexico. This ranch has thousands and thousands of acres. You first have to go past a security guard to get there. So when these officers got there, they were led by the security guard to the set. And then when they get to the set, there's all these it looks like an old Western town. And there's a church in this old Western town. And this is where the filming was that morning. Now, they had filmed some things that morning, but this was after lunch. And Alec Baldwin, they were doing what they call blocking the scene. So he was just sitting in the church pew, and the scene would require him to cross body draw his weapon, from the holster over here this way. And he could have done that with his hand because they're just blocking the scene, meaning they're trying to figure out, is he going to sit this way, or how what's the lighting going to be like, in preparation for a rehearsal and then the actual filming. So he didn't need the weapon, but he was the producer and he asked for the weapon, so it was brought to him, and he said it accidentally went off. So the officer was able to say that he gathered 12 people that said they were in the church at the time of this incident. Obviously, Alec Baldwin, the two people that were shot, chief lighting technician, someone that works costumes. I don't know anything about film, so forgive me if I'm not explaining any of this. A dolly grip person, a script supervisor, a lighting tech assistant chief, the key rig person, first assistant director, uh, I believe he was the one that was shot. Special effects coordinator, special effects key, special effects tech. Yeah, a lot of people in that church. Because initially he's like, oh, they're just 3 or 4 people here. No, there were a lot of people in that church when it went off. Then he was asked, and this is a young guy, he was very young. He was asked, how long have you been a police officer? 4 years. And so, and he's working with this very small police department in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and like they only have 3 officers on per shift. So he was asked, in retrospect, would you have done anything differently? And he said, well, I would first, he would have separated everyone. Instead, what he did was he corralled everybody together. Like, here, I want you all to stay right over here. Because there were hundreds, they said probably a couple hundred people out at this site. So he corralled them all together. So now they're all like, blah, blah, blah. You know what happens when people hear stuff after an event? It sometimes becomes part of their memory of the event. When they, you know, anyway, it's a fact. So he said, retrospectively, he would have separated everyone. But he said, it still would have been very difficult. He goes, we only had 3 cars there. Usually you just throw them in the back of the car and that's it. And they did separate Hannah Gutierrez, the defendant. They put her in the back of the police vehicle. You're not under arrest. I just want to sit. I want you to sit here and calm down. She was very upset. And he said, I would have taken their cell phones. This is key because we know that the prop director was making some phone calls to the owner of the prop company. Yeah, that's going to come into play here. Then the next witness is the deputy, because like I said, there were 3 officers on duty. So this was the shift supervisor who was on duty. He gets out there, and we do get to see his body cam footage. So when he first gets on the scene, he walks towards the church because he says, my first order of business is to make sure they've got enough people assisting with the injured. And he goes into the church and he sees that there's quite a few first responders there, paramedics, firefighters, they're all working on the victims. You can still hear the guy moaning. And then you hear him say, everybody stop what you're doing. This is a crime scene. And it's at that point that they start corralling people that were actually saw what happened in one place and then ask everybody else to, you couldn't leave. They didn't want anybody to leave this set. But there was lots of other places you could go on this set. There's a whole town, a whole western town. So he said it was chaos when he got there, just absolute chaos. And he said, with regard to separating the witnesses, he says there's no way we could have separated these witnesses. I mean, there was 12 of them. 2 of them are injured. There's no way to separate all these witnesses. We just didn't have. We only had 3 officers. He says I did ask for more help, and I think that more people came, but initially they only had 3 officers on the scene. So once he sees that there's enough people working on the victim, his focus then becomes, where's the gun? So he's walking around going, where's the armorer? And he thinks it's the guy. Where's the armorer guy? Where's the armorer guy? And he runs into someone who I now know handles the day-to-day operations on the set. She's called what did they call her? A unit production manager. She says, "Oh, here she comes. Here comes the armorer." But first he wants to know where the gun is. Where's the gun? Where's the gun? And some helpful guy on the set with a cowboy hat and everything, he takes him over to the prop cart. And he shows him, he says, "Oh, there's a couple of guns on the prop cart because that's not the gun that fired." No, no. So then that's when he starts asking for the armorer guy. And he goes to this unit production manager and she points out, "Oh, here she comes now." And you see her approaching and you see got the green and purple hair. She she looked afraid. And she's very upset. "Are they going to be okay? Am I under arrest?" And she knew like this was not a good thing. Um, and she was starting to have a panic attack. He had to call for a medic to come assist her because she was literally that upset. And who could blame her? Eventually, this helpful guy, once he had the armor, she brought the gun to him. She was walking towards him with the gun. "Here's the gun." So she hands him the gun and he secures it. He makes sure it's not loaded. He puts it in the front of his truck. And then he puts her in the back seat of the truck and says, "You're not under arrest. I just need you to calm down. We're going to get you some help." And we probably had air conditioning on, and because it's hot out there. It's October, but this is New Mexico, and they're really in the middle of nowhere, absolutely nowhere. So at this point, he's got to stay there, and he directs this helpful guy with the cowboy hat, "Can you go get me the prop cart?" But he says that he had his eye on him the whole time. He could see him going to get the prop cart. So he brings the prop cart back, and she points out, oh, Hannah points out on the prop cart where the blank bullets came from. There were 2 boxes of ammo on the prop cart. He takes those 2 boxes of ammo, secures them with the gun. Now, the next person on the stand is, oh, before I get that, one of the other things um, about the scene was they had an attorney. Too sweet. There was an attorney right there. And he goes over to talk to the attorney. She's like, "What have you done so far?" And he's like, I'm trying to get, we're not doing statements right now. We're just trying to stabilize the victim, get her to the hospital. She's in critical condition." And she's like, "Okay, okay." But boy, they didn't mess around. She was there, boop, and nobody was leaving the scene. Nobody was allowed to leave. So the next witness was a crime scene investigator. Now she was on the stand for the rest of the day. This is after opening statements and the first 2 officers. It was this crime scene investigator, and she took lots and lots and lots of pictures, hundreds of boxes, or not boxes, hundreds of pieces of ammo. And a lot of those rounds were sent to the FBI for deconstruction. Because what her testimony boiled down to was what she found on the scene was several different types of dummies, some that had a hole in them, which we know that that's one way you can identify a blank round, some that had the silver, oh God, what's the name of that? Where the pin strikes. What's the name of that? Rebecca? Oh my gosh. I don't know guns, you guys. Hold on, I'll find it. Primer. The primer. Okay. So there were several ways you could identify one of these dummy rounds. One was if it had a hole in the projectile. Another was if it had a silver primer on the top. The primers is this little silver dot in the middle that the pin strikes, and it hits that, and then the bullet comes out. If that primer was either missing, if it was missing, they knew it was probably a dummy. If it was there and it was silver, they thought that it was a live round. And then you could shake it, there would be some kind of noisemaker, either a spring or a pellet, like a BB gun pellet, would be inside, and you could shake it and hear it. And the prosecutor actually shook one of the bullets into the microphone, and you could hear it. So this witness testified that there were some that they could not figure out whether they were live or not. So those were a lot of the ones that were sent to the FBI for deconstruction, and they would basically just take the bullet apart to find out if it was live or not. And some that they thought were live because it had this silver primer were actually dummy rounds. So, I mean, how do you really know? Now, you would presume that if a box says dummy rounds, that what's in the box is dummy rounds, right? If you get them from the prop company and they say dummy rounds, you would think dummy rounds? No, apparently not. So she was also the crime scene investigator when the prop truck was searched. And this didn't happen right away. It was several days after Helena Hutchins died. Yeah, 6 days afterwards. Then over a month later, they come back and she was part of them searching this PDQ prop company where the rounds came from. And she took like 5 stacks of photographs at this PDQ prop company. And this place was an absolute mess. Oh my God. I don't know how they found anything in this place. It was horrendous. And there was you could he had boxes of ammo in all these different places, and what they did was they went through every one of those boxes to see if they could distinguish between live rounds and dummy rounds. And she said they only found one box of live rounds, and it was labeled 1983. And we know from the opening statements that he was working on the film Yellowstone 1983 with Hannah Gutierrez Reed's father, Del Reed, and they were using live rounds on that set. And now that set had wrapped up and he brought the rounds back. So, did some of those rounds end up in other boxes? I don't know. Yeah. The next person that we hear from, now this is the next day, Friday, was a sergeant the sergeant of the crime scene investigators. And he said that he wasn't on the stand very long. He found in the prop truck, when he helped search the prop truck, he found a lever action rifle. And I don't know what the significance of this is, but he said that, and he stood up and he showed the jury how you work a lever action rifle, that you have to pull a lever, and then, if you're trying to get the bullets out of it. And when he searched, he pulled the lever and he got the first bullet out of it. And when he does that, another one goes into the chamber. Well, when he did that, a 45 round went into the chamber and it got stuck. Now, he didn't know all this. He learned later on there's a different way you can extract the bullets from this lever action rifle. But that 45 round was stuck. So I don't think that 45 round was supposed to be in the magazine. They said it would fit into the magazine, but it wouldn't fit into the chamber. So how did this 45 round get into this magazine? Who put that in there? Someone who clearly didn't know what they were doing. And maybe that was the point of his testimony, but that was it. So the next person on the stand was a videographer who has this company that provides crew members for production. But what he also does is he films the backstory, so that later on, when this is a hit movie, they can come out with the making of Rust. Here's how So he has all this behind the scene footage. And when he was subpoenaed, he sent over 126 videos that he had taken during the making of this movie, including, Alec Baldwin. There's one that I'm sure we're going to see. They didn't show any of them. They picked out 17 that they're probably going to show during this trial. But I happen to know one of them is Alec Baldwin. telling someone that he's going to aim the gun this way, so you probably should move the camera over this way. So he was definitely aware of gun safety on the set. But he's got all this behind the scene footage. The next person was a cell phone analyst, and he took the phone of Hannah Gutierrez Reed, and your phone comes back to your ID, and this was identified. Her ID was Gorilla Grip Pussy Pal. You could deconstruct that one if you want, because I'd love to know the backstory on that. My mind went all kinds of places with that name. He also analyzed the cell phone of Sarah Zachary. She was the prop director, Sarah's boss, I'm assuming. Worked closely, I'm sorry, Hannah's boss. She worked closely with Hannah, but I believe she also worked for this PDQ company. And this is the person that the defense says tampered with evidence afterwards. So he, and with her phone, they found a lot of deleted files, a lot of deleted files. But some they were able to recover, some they were not. And that included emails, WhatsApp messages, Facebook messages, things like that. But we didn't get to see any of them. They showed one or two, and I don't know if we're going to get to see more of the messages. They showed some messages after the fact between Hannah and a person by the name of Dad Kula. That was how she had him identified in her phone. And I have a feeling this might be her father. He's a famous armorer, and he was telling her, this gun. This was after the shooting. This text message between them that the gun should not have gone off by itself. He says it's a single action. It doesn't go off by itself. I'm sending you the manual, or give her the manual, which I'm assuming means your attorney or the prosecutor or whatever. Give her the manual. Then we get the unit production manager. So she's responsible for the day-to-day operations of this movie set. And she had some really interesting testimony. First, she said she did witness Alex Baldwin getting training with the weapon, but she said his back was turned to her, and she doesn't know if he was paying attention or not. She had heard that he wasn't, but that's hearsay, so you can't talk about that. She says, I didn't witness whether he was paying attention to the training or not. And then she said Hannah never came to her and requested additional training as an armorer. So they talked about this prop truck. Now, this prop truck, versus, there was a cart, which looked like a little gray push cart. But there was also a prop truck. There was a film truck and a prop truck, probably had some other trucks, but they had teamsters that would operate these trucks that were always on site. They were responsible for driving the trucks, moving the trucks, whatever needed to be done with the truck. So they were on site, but this prop truck was not secured while filming would go on during the day, which would start at 6 to 7 in the morning and go to 6 to 7 at night. 12, 13 hours a day. This prop truck was wide open. Now, they would lock it at night with a key that Sarah Zachary had, that she shared with Hannah, and some other people also had a key to it. After the shooting, this unit production manager had the locks on the prop truck changed, and then only she had the key, and then one other person, somebody with the Teamsters maybe had a key. The supervisor of the Teamsters, I think, had a key as well. So afterwards, Hannah came to her and said, I need to get some things out of the prop truck. some personal belongings. And she said she witnessed her take. She said, I didn't see everything. I didn't really look that closely, but I saw her take some gun belts and a cardboard box. So we don't know what was in the cardboard box or anything. But and then it was clarified on recross or redirect that Hannah was the only person that had come to her to say, hey, can I get some stuff out of that prop truck after the locks were changed? But before that, everybody had access to this prop truck. Now, here's the interesting part. The night before the shooting, the 6-member film crew walked off set. And they were disgruntled. They had some complaints. We didn't hear what the complaints were, except one of the complaints was that there were too many accidental discharges of prop guns on the set. So that night, she had to get on the phone and get another film crew. She said that night she was making calls. The next day she's making calls to get people on the set. So that puts into my mind, and maybe the jurors too, that could have this have been sabotage? You know, they're trying to make a point, but I don't know. Why would they do that? That's, you know, somebody was killed. That's horrible. So she said those 6 people were on the set the next morning, but they were just there to get their things out of the film truck because a lot of times they'll bring their own equipment. So the next morning, they came back to get their stuff out of the film truck. So did they access the prop truck too while they were there? I don't know. So then the court ended early on Friday. But before she sends the jury home for the weekend, the judge, she says that I'm going to send you back to the jury room, and there's a question I need for you guys to answer. So once you answer the question, I'll bring you back in, and then I'll give you all the stuff you're not supposed to do over the weekend. And I'm dying to know what it said. Like, do you want pizza or subs for lunch on Monday or something? Or, what was the question? Inquiring minds want to know what was the question. Okay. So I will continue the coverage of that trial. I'll watch today's coverage and I will bring that recap to you tomorrow. Have a wonderful Monday and I'll see you then. Bye, everybody.